Well, happy Monday night. How you doing? I'm Aaron here in the Bowtie Treasures studio as always. Happy to be joining you tonight. Painting projects featuring Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint for sure. I'm a Dixie Belle content creator, so I always love to share my content with you. If you haven't already done so, make sure you head over to YouTube sometime and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And we have quite an unusual project. I'm not painting furniture. It's more or less home decor, but I think it's a fun project, so I want to share the techniques with you. All right, let me tell you a little bit about what I'm doing tonight. First of all, here's the before pics of what I'm doing. There's 4 panels, and they are all just really decorative, highly detailed, and lots of depth. I've already practically finished the far left one with the fish. It was one of my favorites, so of course I did that first. The second one from the left is the one we'll work on tonight as well, and we probably will paint the one on the far right, get that to the point where it's all chocolate. We'll see how time goes, but these are the before pictures, so definitely stay tuned to see how they all turn out. I don't really have a screen for this, but the client gave me kind of like a little inspiration sheet. I'm going with this almost barn wood door, rustic, aged, imperfectly aged style. And this is basically the look that I have so far, where you can, also they kind of wanted it in inverted gradient, so kind of ombre, where the top is dark down to a lighter color. And the other thing that we did was also bring in metallics. Let me see if my camera will let me get you in close. I want to show you. And I wanted to start it with this because I'm excited about how it's turning out. So you can see the metallics. There's going to be gold. Some of this is bronze as well. And also part of it is me wet distressing to the original finish. But you can see some of the Dixie Belle bronze and gold at play. A lot of dry brushing, if you will. So I'm going to show this technique tonight. That's my goal. And I want to feature how I got to that step. So this right here is basically chocolate. I'm going to bring it in one more time. So this is chocolate, but notice how you can see metallics. That's the original panel finish that I wet distressed. So basically after it's mostly dry, I went back and just wiped off to the original finish. So I want some of that. That gives you a little bit of a aged feel when you can layer in multiple steps. So that's what we need to do on this project. So here we go. I've been mainly featuring 2 brushes for my project. One is Dixie Belle's premium chip brush, and also just another brush to put this is what I used to put the chocolate on. Everything else I did with 2 premium chip brushes. So again, I'm going to replicate this towards the end of my live, but if we have time. If not, we're just going to focus on finishing this one out. Chocolate over the original finish. I did not do any boss or anything like that. These are home decor pieces. They're not going to get a lot of hands-on touching or anything like that. I didn't feel like I needed to prime it. 3 colors. Chocolate, as I mentioned, is the base. And then the next color is burlap. And then the third one we'll finish off with fluff. Y'all talking. So just basically using my brush, you're going to find that I'm going to do a lot of this right here. That's just because I don't want too much paint on my brush, just enough I don't want to gob it up. These are all going to be lined up together, so I need to kind of keep a somewhat of the same angle. So here we go. So you see how I'm just kind of just hitting it. I am going to cover a lot of this up, but if I don't do this, there won't be hints of this warm color. Client wanted mochas, chocolates, and the white and the off-white. I'm using Fluff because Fluff is not as stark white as cotton is. So again, just a light, and because I'm having the left side be wider at the bottom, I can put more of this burlap on the bottom. But as I go towards the top, and notice I haven't even gone back into the container yet. It's carrying a lot of, it's just enough paint. And it's to my advantage when you do this kind of technique that as you get less and less of that, you can go to areas where you don't want a lot. So let me show you what I mean. So I haven't dipped back into the container, so my brush should have less paint on it. So I can go to areas that I don't want it to be heavy. And I can use that non-saturated brush. So we're going with a weathered style. If the idea is to go with somewhat of an old barn door, then you can imagine that over time paint has worn off or blown off or been repainted. And usually when I'm doing this kind of technique, I want to go parallel. So I'm going to go up and down, side to side. Now there's so many decorative elements in here. You might need to do some dabbing here and there. It just depends. All 4 of these panels are totally different. So I have to kind of go with what each panel is giving me, right? Little bristle there. If I pull you back out so you can see everything, then you're not going to see the details. So there may be times I jump off camera. Sorry about that. But I'm kind of going for the best of both worlds here. So again, and the other thing that's really nice is that because the brush can't get around the entire object, I'm left with a little bit of a halo. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Do you see how there's a little bit of a darker area? It's almost like I've waxed. Well, that's because the brush isn't getting there. That actually plays to my favor because it helps those details pop really well. Just reminding myself that this is not the final color. I just want pops of this little bit of burlap here and there to show through. Once I get about halfway, I need to start reducing the amount of fluff that I do, or light areas. Now, because my panel does need to be done on the side, every once in a while, I will need to come in and turn it sideways so I can get all sides. I'm even going different, you see how I'm pushing in there? I want the color to be in the sides a little bit. I find too, when I rotate the panel, that I find some areas that I might have missed just because I'm moving so quickly. See how I'm just hitting? Don't want a lot of this down there, up there. All right, I think that's pretty good. Up real quick, let's turn it sideways. And I'm going to hit the bottom. You're not really painting super wet, so it shouldn't be a problem to set it back down. It should dry okay, but while I have it down, this is where I need to start going a little heavier. This is Fluff. And I do want to get it in some of the cracks and areas, so I might jab it in there because I don't want it to be too stark. Of course, as I move up the panel, let's go ahead and do the side. Now we can turn it up. So here's where I need to start looking. You see how it starts? I'm going to move my panel around just a little bit. The camera's, so about right in here is where I start fading out. And that, I'll use this flower, I think that'll be good. Not that there's not any there. I'm letting the subject matter dictate it a little bit. So again, same technique as what I just did with burlap, but I can, when I'm close enough, I can see that burlap peeking through, which is really nice. It just gives me a layer. Remember I said the client wanted mochas and chocolates, so I definitely want to keep some of that burlap color showing through. Some other colors that I considered using was sandbar. Probably could have done buttercream. It's a little yellower though. I think these 3 colors complement each other so well. Notice I'm not really, I'm not jabbing paint into the cracks too much. I've never worked on something like this before. I don't think I would have had the creativity or the vision that my client has. but she is an interior decorator, so I hope that's her job, right? I probably would have never bought them either, just because I wouldn't put them in my house, but she's doing a really great design for her client in Houston, and I love the style. So sometimes you just need to have a little bit of creativity, a little bit of vision. So we're doing pretty good. You can kind of, it almost feels like it's snow-capped, frosty kind of. And we're getting to the point where I have to start making calls as far as where do I start fading it out. So I'm not pushing, I'm kind of just letting, my hand's very light on the brush. I'm letting the details of the panel grab the brush and pull the paint off the brush. So there are going to be times like I am right now, I may have to push it into some areas just so it's not, I don't want it 100% chocolate anywhere. I want there to be at least a dusting or a glazing of that color. Okay. I think whoever designed the artistic aspect of these panels knew that they were going to even fade out the details of the top. So I'm playing with that. It's amazing how much detail cracks, maybe cracks not the word, imperfections in the background show up when you do this technique, which to me gives it more character. I really like that a lot. Of course, the fish one's my favorite just because it's a subject we all can relate to. And I'm looking for areas where I want to get a little heavier. I've got some areas in here, for example, that have a little bit more paint. So let me go back and put a little bit more brushes of that. This is very much in the realm of artistic interpretation, meaning you have to use your gut feeling as to when to stop, when not to stop. But I'm really loving how the details are popping. I'm kind of creating this warm vibe overall. Okay, so I need to be a little light here. I don't want to be heavy-handed here. Definitely don't want to have to go back and repaint anything because I was just too heavy with the brush. So you see how I'm just dusting it. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to be prominent, hitting these decorative elements. This should be more chocolate at the top than not. But the art is giving me a little bit of a fit as far as getting a brush in there, but not too bad. I will not top coat them until I get all of them done. I had considered spraying the top coat on with my sprayer because there's so many crazy spaces that are hard to get to, but we'll see. If you can paint it with a brush, you can spray top coat it with the brush, but we'll see. It's getting a little close to winter now, so kind of have to watch the temperature, but it's been warm here. All right, let's compare the two, see how we're doing. Take a step back with you. I think we did pretty good. You can see it's kind of fading out about right here. This is where you just kind of pull that brush up a little bit. Give it some more dusting areas. Want to get some of that fluff into the, I don't really want stark chocolate. It was really funny when I painted the one on the left because it looked like the fish were made of chocolate. So we're done with fluff tonight. I do want to paint a third panel with you, and we'll kind of let that be our, I'm gonna put a little bit more dusting up here. Got a little bit more paint on the brush. It just needs a little bit more. This technique works with a lot of things. I've done it with chairs and furniture. Just find it very versatile and forgiving. Okay, I'm gonna put that to the side. Now we have metallics. So Let me tell you another step that we can still do. I think I may have done this, so let's do some of it. So I have a rag. I like to have a wet rag. When I say wet, I wring it out really good so there's nothing dripping. But it doesn't hurt to go in there with a wet rag and rub off. And I think it'd be good if I show you this a little closer. So just come in there with the wet rag and just rub off until you can see some of the original metallic, because you're going to get a little bit more depth if you do that. I wouldn't rub all of it off, but once in a while just find a place to give it a good happy rub. That's what Bob Ross would say. Okay, I am going to come back with Dixie Belle Gilding Wax in just a moment, but this just gives you a little bit more of that natural color. And since I wet distressed the chocolate, it just gives it more depth. I like bringing some of the original color in. So you can see, my camera will show you. Is it letting me do it right in here? Probably just too close. It's just peeking through a little bit. So we'll do this. And just find either some consistent places compared to the other panel, or again, just keep it real, keep it random. Nothing wrong with that. The paint isn't on so thick that I can't do this, so. This is copper right now, and we're going to use copper. This is still back to somewhat of a random, just like as random as I was with wet distressing, I'm being random with this. In fact, I don't want as much as the copper. I want more gold. To me, the copper will be my accent warm color, but gold will be for the win, if you will. What I did on the fish is I used copper more on the tails. I just thought that was a nice plan, is to let the tails, and then the fins, I also hit the fins with copper. It just kind of became a nice, gave me some purpose and order to what I was doing. All right, so again, just a few random places just to add some pops of warmth. This one has a lot of flowers, so you could go pretty crazy. It would be, well, for me, it would be a little crazy and a lot of work to go in here and try and expect to put it on, paint all the race surface. Can you imagine that project? So let's put copper to the side. And I will bring out gold now. This is the one that I really want to use more of. But keep in mind, on the fish, I used it heavily on the main focal points, which are the fish. In this one, there's a lot more pieces. So I probably want to say ratio-wise, I want to use maybe twice as much gold as I did copper. Just again, that's going to be the main go-to color in this palette. So I'm looking for interesting places to put gold, but I'm not trying to cover everything, just random spots of happiness. I think my favorite part of these two leaves, these are really cool. Just the way they bend and curve. I like to bring you guys in once in a while. So let's focus on this little section here while I just give it some gold. I think those look like they belong together now. That was the goal. If you remember, that was just all chocolate with some wet distressing. And now I feel like they're really coming together. You want to see the one I was talking about? So this is the one that's probably my least favorite. Not that it's bad, it's just, I think it's also going to be the hardest one. The sky, the deer, the little kid at the bottom. So really, and so if you compare the two styles before and after, they're really different. This one will have a satin finish when it's done, so it'll just have a little bit of sheen, but very cool. I love the warm tones with the gold. Looks really good. There is a bit of chocolate in the panel, but there is also a lot of gold and green, and that doesn't fall into the palette of the customer's home. So the other thing that I did not do, I was not worried at this point of, I don't want to dilute, I don't want to do 2 coats of chocolate. So I was, liberal may not be the right word, but I was trying to be fairly consistent. But keep in mind, if any of the original color shows through, I have enough overlapping dry brush color technique that you may not see that very well. But I think this is a very effective method. If you sprayed it, you're going to get a very somewhat perfect brush or fill, as opposed to a brush. It's totally fine if I have a brush stroke or an area I didn't get, because that just plays it along into the worn, cozy look that we're going for. So don't feel, in this case, I'm not going to feel offended if I don't get every single area. So basically, you can let this set. Right now, since it's winter, my studio is not as hot, so my paint's drying a lot slower. But this is fine to work now, but when it's a little drier, it actually works well because you're actually kind of rubbing off paint. So wet distressing is basically, I usually take a wet rag and I'm just wiping off. After a while, you're gonna move that brush around, but you're just looking for high points. You're not trying to wipe all points. And you're just letting some of that original gold come through. You are going to cover up a lot of these high points, but if you don't, there's your layer element we talked about at the beginning. And just a few areas. You're not trying to remove all your work. Just highlight a few key areas. The wetter the paint, the easier it will be to get off, but it also probably is a little bit messier. If you wait till it's dry, you might get more of a, kind of a, I'm gonna say a tear, more of a more distressed. But when it's wet, you're almost just wiping paint off. So you just might try it at different stages and say, oh, it's not really kind of look I want. It's too smooth. I want it to be a little bit more like the paint peeled. Then I would let the paint dry a little bit. So that's my wet distressing that I do. After that's dry, then I do all the technique I did at the beginning of the live. Well, I think I've given you the full run through, showing you how I accomplished the look from beginning to end. We just may not have gone from beginning to end. This is really the first step. Then the wet distressing. Then as I showed you, I used burlap, and then I used fluff, and we came back after that with Dixie Belle's Gilding Wax Copper and Gold. Last step, satin top coat. That'll finish these off and they'll be ready for the client. I hope that was adventurous for you as much as it was for me. Always let me know, if you don't mind, that you enjoyed watching it, and if you have any questions, let me know. Be sure to use the link in the description. That always helps me out, keeps things moving around here. Until next time, right here in the Bowtie Treasure Studio, have a fantastic holiday season. Thanks so much for watching. Do something awesome, be creative, and until next time.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye.